Local flooding caused by Hurricane Andrew. The story tonight.
Back up. I'll be honest with you, it's total fear.
The rain, torrential. The winds, destructive. The storm, deadly. Tonight, you'll be facing Hurricane Andrew, eye to eye.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Grip.
And I'm Nancy Pierce.
As night falls tonight over southern Louisiana and the Miami area, the enormous amount of the destruction left behind by Hurricane Andrew is finally being comprehended.
More than 20 people are dead tonight. At least 250,000 people are homeless, and there is billions of dollars of damage.
It is a natural disaster with a very human face, as our neighbors struggle tonight to put their lives back together.
During the next half hour, you are going to see just what Hurricane Andrew has left in its wake. Joining us tonight, meteorologist Steve Bray. Steve, welcome back from your trip following Andrew. We know it was a tough trip. We're glad you're safe and sound. This wasn't your first hurricane, probably won't be your last.
No, it probably won't. It may not even be the last one this year because Andrew, as you know, was the first storm of the year. It was a deadly storm. It was a very powerful storm. We spent the last 2 days in Morgan City, Louisiana, right in the eye wall of the storm. The eye passed about 30 miles to the west of us. The town was just left in shambles. Nobody died in Morgan City, but they are going to have to pick up the pieces for the next couple of weeks. In just a few moments, I'll be back and tell you exactly what we experienced in Morgan City, Louisiana.
Glad you made it back in one piece.
Thank you.
All right. Destructive path of Hurricane Andrew will long be remembered.
It never slowed as it swept through the Bahamas. Then on Monday, it slammed into southern Florida, rolled into the Gulf, and hit the Cajun country of Louisiana late Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. Take a look and listen.
Move down to the last quarter. Be careful. Come on, y'all doing great. Good, good. Y'all gonna have to leave some of that stuff here. Bring the main fence.
I'm doing fine. My husband is he's got a bad back and he can't hardly walk, but we're doing pretty good right now.
It's the Bible. Been reading it all night.
Everybody okay? Right now? Okay. 2, 3. All right. Rig got me in the rib right there, in the left rib. Okay.
Left. All we're going to do is go where the wind won't be here.
Not really. I just hit a tree falling and the wind blowing and hope it don't hit the house and knock the tent off, you know, or pass through the door.
What? Y'all found it? What?
Across the street, and I grabbed my wife and we started trying to get to the bathroom, and by that time the wall came down on top of us. My wife was trapped under me, and it just took a while, you know, we got out.
Well, that man's wife survived with just a few minor scrapes. And while the terror on the ground has changed people's lives, take a look from above. South of Miami, in Homestead, Florida, miles and miles of homes destroyed. Walls torn apart, roofs blown completely off, trees snapped like matchsticks. Tonight, there is no electricity there, no water, and very little food. And in southern Louisiana, floodwaters are the problem. Action News 10 flew with the Coast Guard automobile. Listen to this description.
We can see considerable amounts of flooding. We see evidence of wind damage to trailers, to the roofs of buildings. We saw some ships that had taken on some water and had settled at the piers.
The Big Easy, New Orleans, escaped much of the wrath of Hurricane Andrew. The rain came down and the wind howled. For hours on Tuesday, many folks in New Orleans braced for the storm. But it was the tornadoes in the aftermath of Andrew which caused the most damage and injured more than 30 people. The Mobile area and the Mississippi coast felt the effects of Andrew. On Dauphin Island, water covered parts of the West Beach area roadway. There was also significant beach erosion. In Mississippi, the winds bent the trees for folks in that area. However, the boarding of storefronts in anticipation of Andrew is all that's left of the storm. And in Pensacola Beach, the high waves, relentless pounding of the pier proved too much for the hurricane. A section toward the end collapsed. Thankfully, no one was injured. Now, our area has been spared, but as you've just seen, many other folks tonight are not so lucky.
Meteorologist Steve Bray joins us once again. I think folks who have not seen a hurricane or been through a hurricane really underestimate what kind of a storm it is.
I tell you what, I've been studying hurricanes for years now. I've been watching video of storms like Gilbert, Hugo, Camille, and when I went into the eye wall of that storm, I was just impressed, I guess you could say, because you have to be impressed with the awesome power of Mother Nature, but you have to, I don't know if there's any way you can estimate what these storms are going to do. They're just massive. And coming up next, our terrifying night in the eye of Hurricane Andrew.
Facing Hurricane Andrew eye to eye will continue.
WALA Channel 10 and Jeffrey Steele invite you to join us in saluting the workers of America during this Labor Day holiday. WALA Channel 10 and Jeffrey Steele hope you have a safe Labor Day.
Hurricane Andrew blew through South Florida Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, it was in the Gulf of Mexico. By Tuesday afternoon, it was headed for Louisiana, and so were we. Photographer Russ Bradley and I drove through gusty winds and rain in Mississippi, but when we reached Lafayette, Louisiana, the sun peeked through. Now, ironic considering that was about to occur during the next 24 hours in our final stop, Morgan City. We drove into town around 7:30 in the evening. The rain was coming down and the wind had just started to increase. By 10 o'clock, Hurricane Andrew was still offshore and the wind was just beginning to show the force of the storm. By 11 o'clock, the city was prepared, according to Mayor Cedric LaFleur, at least as much as it could be.
Most of the people left that could leave. You know, a lot of them couldn't leave and a lot of them won't leave, but I thought the evacuation went great. I think it's a very dangerous storm. I'm just grateful and thank God it don't come over here, and if more than it is so far, but we still have about 3 hours left to go.
That was an optimistic forecast. As it turned out, hurricane-force winds would be battering us for the next 8 hours. Hurricane Andrew is headed right this way. Winds have picked up to about 100 miles an hour with gusts. And this seawall is going to protect the city. It's 21 feet high. The storm surge with Hurricane Andrew is expected to be between 12 and 15 feet. Let's hope this works.
Well, be careful, don't fly.
At midnight during the peak of the storm, city officials braved driving rain and flying debris to check the river level. It was the last time they would be able to leave the protection of City Hall until the storm passed. But City Hall took a beating as well. It's 1:30 in the morning and the storm has been downgraded from a Category 4 storm to a Category 3. Winds offshore are supposed to be at 125 miles an hour, and they're pretty close to that here. The eye passed 30 miles to the west of us. Morgan City was not the place to be. Winds may have dropped to 125, but they had to be gusting as high as 150 miles per hour, and the fury of Andrew would last into morning.
It was an extremely rough night in Morgan City. It was a nightmare. Then the folks in the town woke up and realized the nightmare had just begun.
The aftermath of Hurricane Andrew left the residents of the small Louisiana town in shock. What was going through your mind as you're driving through the streets of your city?
Despair and sadness, and yet grateful that we haven't lost any lives.
All residents escaped with their lives, but some lost everything else.
I definitely wanted it to stop, especially when the carport started going up and down. That's when it really got scary.
We had reservations in New Iberia. And for some reason, I said, man, I ain't staying there. We're going to go a little further. That motel is, oh man, those people must have went through hell last night.
Our first 12 hours in Morgan City were filled with fear and anticipation of what Andrew would leave behind. In the second 12 hours, there was destruction, but there was also hope and determination. This city will rebuild.
Oh, it was horrible. It really was. But we were all thankful that everybody was okay.
Looks like a lot of work, but we're going to survive and we'll make it again. So it's about all we can do is survive.
When we left Morgan City, we headed north to New Iberia along roads that were in some cases partially blocked. One of the people we met in New Iberia is by now a familiar face to many of you, NBC's Paul Hogan. He's in Franklin, Louisiana tonight. Paul, what's the situation there?
Well, Steve, they've just begun a curfew here. At night, you'll see state police, a few National Guardsmen, and the local sheriff's people walking up and down Main Street here, where virtually every business was either damaged or destroyed, trying to prevent looting. There is no electricity here. There is no running water, that sort of thing. So food is hard to come by, and security is what the law enforcement people here have in mind, Steve.
Do you still get that sense, like we kind of received in Morgan City, that the people are ready to rebuild, or do you see a lot of gloom and doom?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know. I asked one person today, how can you smile when you look at your home that doesn't have a roof on? He said, well, that's the Cajun attitude. The Cajun attitude. And they said they're going to go right ahead and rebuild.
Well, thanks, Paul. Keep in touch, please. Now, Hurricane Andrew victims need all the help they can get tonight, and they're getting it from a lot of generous people along the Gulf Coast. Don Davis joins us live from one of those collection points, the Bay Area Food Bank in West Mobile. Don?
Steve, I tell you, Mobilians are definitely rallying to help our neighbors to the west. Coming up next, we'll tell you what you can give and how you can give it.
Facing Hurricane Andrew eye to eye will continue.
The wind may have stopped blowing, but the tragedy isn't over in Louisiana and Florida. 2 people were killed this morning when their twin-engine relief plane hit 2 houses shortly after takeoff. A 3rd person was injured. The plane was carrying non-perishable food and diapers to hurricane victims. Relief supplies are arriving in Florida, just not quickly enough to help everyone. At least 250,000 people are still homeless tonight in Florida. There's a great spirit of giving along the Gulf Coast in the face of this tragedy. Folks here are doing whatever they can to help the people whose lives are ripped apart because of Andrew. Don Davis now joins us live from the Bay Area Food Bank in Mobile with an update on the relief effort. Don?
I tell you, Steve, the storm slammed in the Louisiana coastline less than 36 hours ago, but already Mobilians are showing what they can do. Now, you probably went to the store to prepare for the storm yourself. Now's the time to take those extra supplies that you picked up, put them in a bag, and bring them to places like where we're at now. This is just a sample of some of the stuff that has come in. They're asking for non-perishable items like crackers, powdered milk. These people are definitely going to need stuff like this. Any type of canned goods like beef stew. They have a box of Fruit Loops here, and that's definitely going to come in in handy for a family. Also things you probably wouldn't think of, like baby wipes, because people with children are going to need just about everything, even including diapers, and this person even put in some baby powder. Also, don't forget about the pets too. Any type of pet food, dog food, treats or stuff like that is going to be needed, and paper products, including toilet paper and of course paper towels. Detergent will be needed shortly, and lawn and leaf bags will definitely be used to help in the cleanup. So people really just need about everything. Also things you really wouldn't think about, even Band-Aids. We have a couple of boxes in this crate here. Also soap, and again paper products, canned goods, you name it, these people are going to need it. Also we have a bag of charcoal that somebody brought in as well. They're saying non-perishable items, that's what we do need to send to our friends to the west. Ron Prado of the Bay Area Food Bank joins us now. Thank you for joining us tonight. How have the donations come in today? Has it been pretty good, a steady flow?
It's beginning to increase somewhat. However, we've had a lot of promises of more food coming in. There are, at the latest, we've had QMS is doing the food drive to get some food in here. The Providence Hospital is doing the food drive, and we expect it to come in within the next couple of days. We also, as another latest assistance, is Del Champs has agreed to place containers in each one of the stores throughout the state. As a matter of fact, throughout the 4 states. And that should tend to accumulate.
Just a few minutes ago, we had a couple of bags that were brought in. Some people were just bringing in stuff, and you're definitely encouraging that, aren't you?
Please. One of the things that is important to know that there is a lot of reciprocity between food banks. And if it had happened to us, the food bank in Louisiana, the food bank in Birmingham, and the food bank in Florida would do the same thing for us, as well as the community.
That's right. And also you're stressing non-perishable food items, things in boxes and cans.
If at all possible, try to do nothing but perishables. Try to bring in the beans, dry beans also, you know, bring rice, to bring fish, poultry, and cans, vegetables, fruits, things of that sort.
All right, so just a little bit of everything. And Steve, that was just a sample of what people have already started to bring in, and I believe you're going to tell us where people can bring it, and it's so important to just go ahead and bring the stuff because these people definitely need our help. Steve?
Don, I know the people along the Gulf Coast are very generous, but are you kind of surprised how fast it's been flowing in so far?
I tell you, it was really interesting. Over the past few minutes, we've had at least 2 cars that drove up to the food bank here and dumped off a couple of bags, and the bags were filled with everything that these people are going to need. So it's kind of surprising that already people are starting to bring stuff even tonight, and the load behind us is growing as we speak. So it has been a surprise to me.
Okay, thanks a lot. Don Davis reporting live. We're about to give you some locations if you're interested in donating non-perishable food items for storm victims. There are so many programs, we can only mention a few. So get your pencils ready. Here we go. As we just saw, the Bay Area Food Bank at 551-C Western Drive is accepting canned goods. The American Red Cross is also collecting at its Dauphin and Broad Street locations. The Salvation Army is accepting donations at 1009 Dauphin Street. And in Pensacola, the Florida Highway Patrol is collecting at 150 Stumpfield Road in Pensacola until 9 tonight. Now, once again, there are too many of you out there to mention and in this half hour. Now, but we'd like to salute all of you going above and beyond the call and for being one of the few bright spots in all of this. Now, coming up next, I'll talk live with a reporter we worked with in Morgan City when the storm was at its peak. He's still on the job tonight. And I'll also talk with John Ed Thompson, who's had an ear to the ground since the storm hit Louisiana, as Facing Hurricane Andrew Eye to Eye continues.
Facing Hurricane Andrew Eye to Eye will continue.
Now, there's a lot of severe weather we've been reporting over the last couple of days, and obviously it's not over. We have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Baldwin County this evening until 8:15 p.m. Take a look at the radar and you can see the heavy thunderstorms that are in the area, kind of a line up to the north. Those are going to be with us for a while. They're going to be kind of running to the southeast at 35 miles an hour, so we may see some more warnings posted. That's till 8:15 for Baldwin County, a severe thunderstorm warning. Now, in some areas of Louisiana, communication is virtually non-existent except by radio. When Andrew came ashore, radio operator Renee Stigler was talking with some of the folks in the middle of the storm. John Ed Thompson, who works with Stigler, joins us now. John Ed?
Well, hi, Steve. We did spend the night with Renee, and Renee was he was fantastic because he brought all of his gear down here. We put the antenna on the roof, and in some cases, we were able to talk back to the people in Louisiana who had no way of finding out what actually was going on, because on our radar, pointing it toward New Orleans, we could see exactly where the worst of the storm bands were. In other words, there were nice rings around New Orleans, also rings around Morgan City. So in some cases, we were able to transmit more information back into the storm than was being transmitted out. But throughout the night, we did, of course, get some information out, because during the night we could hear when the winds picked up to 125 miles per hour. One civil defense location lost its wind gauge at that point. Also, one guy said it's getting a little bit too windy right now, so I'm laying my antenna down. Renee was with us all night long. We thank Renee for his equipment. We thank him for his patience, and we may need him again sometime, Steve.
Thanks a lot, John Ed. Now, you've seen what it was like in Morgan City when Hurricane Andrew blasted through towns with winds up to 160 miles per hour. One of the people we worked with then is John Sherman. He's a reporter at WVUE TV in New Orleans. His work is never done, and he joins us now from Madisonville, Louisiana. John, how you doing?
Pretty well, Steve. You're right about that. The work never seems to be done. You are reporting a lot at this point on aftermath in the wake of Hurricane Andrew. Oh, at this point, as a matter of fact, we were just up north talking to people who are experiencing flooding in their houses. And this is actually from when Andrew became a tropical storm and moved north of the city and north of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It rained very heavily north of that city. And now all the rivers and tributaries that lead down into the New Orleans area are in fact getting very high, and flooding is occurring in some places. Back to Morgan City. We arrived back in the New Orleans area late last night. And in Morgan City, I have to tell you, it was one of the scariest things I have ever gone through. We arrived somewhere around 7 o'clock in the p.m. in Morgan City a couple of days ago, and really up until about 10 o'clock, we were thinking nothing was going to happen, but boy, did we get a shock. It all really began to pick up for about 2 o'clock and was terrible until about 6, 7 in the morning.
Okay, thanks a lot, John. It sure was rather interesting, wasn't it? Now, after this, when we come back, Bob and Nancy will have some hurricane tips to tell you how you can be prepared for the next one, and I'll have some final thoughts on Hurricane Andrew.
It was incredible.
Facing Hurricane Andrew eye to eye will continue.
As you've seen tonight, a hurricane, any hurricane, is serious business and can take a tragic toll in life and in property.
But there are ways to make sure you don't fall victim to the next killer storm. Always move to a safer place if an evacuation is called where you live. Protect all your windows with tape or boards.
Stock up on items like flashlights, batteries, and extra water. And be sure to fill up your car with gasoline.
Now remember, Andrew is only the first named storm of the season. There could be more, and we certainly need to be prepared. It certainly sounded as though many, many people were prepared for Hurricane Andrew. You hear a lot about hurricane parties and people just waiting them out. It seemed, though, that most folks took off and went to the evacuation shelters.
There seems to be a lot of tropical activity with Andrew, and now there's a tropical wave developing off the coast of Bermuda. We don't have to worry about that, but the water is warm up there.
Yeah, that's right. It's the time of the year, and the people in Louisiana that we met in Morgan City were ready for this storm. As much as you possibly can be, they moved to higher ground, at least most of them, the folks that sat it out. You know, you have to give them credit. They rode out the storm, but it's not advised to do that. Now, we were in Morgan City for about 24 hours, and it was scary at times. The winds were up to 150 miles per hour. Windows were crashing in all around you. It's not recommended that you go through that, but it's an experience I'll never forget, and hopefully we won't have to go through that here in the Gulf Coast area again very soon.
Hope not. All right. Thanks, Steve. Well, the folks in Florida and Louisiana are just beginning the process of rebuilding.
It will certainly be long and painful, as it always is after a tragedy like this.
After going through the eye of this storm, there's one thing I know for sure tonight. The people of Florida and Louisiana will look back stronger than ever. As we say goodnight, listen, this Louisiana woman who lost everything to Andrew. For all of us here at Action News 10, I'm meteorologist Steve Bray.
We're not
Good
giving
night.
up. We're survivors. I've survived the death of my husband. I've survived being poor. We stuck together, the four of us, and we're going to stick together through this.